thought I'd be telling the story. But after what happened 3 months ago, I can't shake the feeling that someone needs to hear it. Maybe it'll save someone else from going through what I did. Work the night shift at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town. It's one of those places that attracts truck drivers, insomniacs, and people who just don't fit anywhere else during normal hours. The pay is decent enough, and I've gotten used to the strange characters that drift in and out throughout the night. Most of them are harmless, just lonely souls looking for coffee and a warm meal. A particular night started like any other. It was around 2:30 a.m., and the diner was unusually quiet. We only had 3 customers, an elderly trucker nursing his 4th cup of coffee, a young couple sharing a slice of pie, and a man I'd never seen before sitting alone in the corner booth. He'd been there for over an hour, barely touching his food, just staring out the window with these intense, dark eyes. There was something off about him from the moment he walked in. He was tall and thin, wearing a wrinkled business suit that looked like he'd slept in it. His hair was greasy and unkempt, and he had this nervous tick where he would drum his fingers on the table in a specific pattern. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap, pause. Over and over again. When he ordered, he spoke so quietly that I had to lean in to hear him. His breath smelled like cigarettes, and something else I couldn't identify, something sweet and rotten. He asked for black coffee and a slice of apple pie, but like I said, he barely touched either. Around 3 a.m., I needed to use the employee restroom. It's located in the back of the diner, down a narrow hallway past the kitchen. The customer restrooms are up front, near the entrance, but staff aren't supposed to use those during our shifts. Company policy. I told my coworker Jake that I'd be right back. He was busy prepping for the morning rush, so he just nodded without looking up from his prep work. The walk to the back restroom always made me slightly uncomfortable. The hallway is dimly lit, and there's something about the flickering fluorescent light that creates these dancing shadows on the walls. As I approached the restroom door, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate footsteps that seemed to match my pace. I turned around, expecting to see Jake, or maybe one of the customers looking for the bathroom, but the hallway was empty. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting that sickly yellow glow on everything. I shrugged it off and went into the restroom. It's a single-person bathroom with a heavy door that automatically locks when you close it. I always appreciate that privacy, especially during the quiet night hours when every sound seemed amplified. I was washing my hands when I heard it, that same rhythmic tapping from earlier. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap, pause. But this time, it was coming from right outside the bathroom door. My blood ran cold as I realized it was the man from the corner booth. I stayed perfectly still, hoping he would just go away. Maybe he was lost, looking for the customer restroom. The tapping continued for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds. Then it stopped, and I heard footsteps moving away. I waited another minute before cracking the door open. The hallway appeared empty, so I stepped out, eager to get back to the safety of the main dining area. That's when I felt a hand grab my wrist. He had been hiding in the small alcove next to the restroom, probably pressed against the wall where I couldn't see him. His grip was surprisingly strong, and his skin felt cold and clammy. Up close, I could see that his eyes were bloodshot and had this wild, unfocused look. "You smell like vanilla," he whispered, his face uncomfortably close to mine. "I've been watching you all night. You move like a dancer." I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. That's when I noticed the scars on his hands, thin, precise lines that looked deliberate, like he'd carved them himself. Panic started to set in as I realized how isolated we were back here. The kitchen was around the corner, and with all the noise from the prep work, Jake wouldn't hear me if I screamed. "Let me go," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. "My coworker is expecting me back." He tilted his head to one side, studying me like I was some kind of interesting specimen. "Your coworker is busy." I made sure of that. I called in a complaint about the coffee being cold. He's dealing with an angry customer right now. That's when I knew this wasn't some random encounter. He had planned this. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. He'd been watching me, learning my routine, waiting for the perfect moment. "What do you want?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. His smile was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. It was too wide, showing too many teeth, and it didn't reach his eyes at all. "I want to know what you taste like," he said, and I could see his tongue dart out to wet his lips. That's when my survival instincts kicked in. I stomped down hard on his foot with my heel, and simultaneously brought my knee up toward his groin. He doubled over, loosening his grip just enough for me to break free. I ran toward the main dining area as fast as I could, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. When I burst into the dining room, I saw Jake at the front counter, looking confused and slightly annoyed. There was no angry customer. The elderly trucker had fallen asleep in his booth, and the young couple was gone. The man had lied about the complaint. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, seeing my flushed face and panicked expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Quickly told him what happened, and he immediately called the police. We both went to check the back hallway, but the man was gone. When we looked out the front window, his car was no longer in the parking lot. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Police arrived within 10 minutes and took my statement. They searched the area and reviewed the security footage, but the cameras in the back hallway hadn't been working for months. Something I hadn't known until that night. The front camera caught him leaving, but the angle was bad and his license plate was obscured. The officer who took my report said they'd do what they could, but without better footage or witnesses, there wasn't much to go on. He did mention that there had been similar incidents reported at other late-night establishments in the area over the past few months. Women being followed, cornered, or approached by a man matching the same description. Finished my shift that night, but I've never felt the same about working alone during those quiet hours. I asked my manager to install new security cameras and to fix the ones that weren't working. I also started carrying pepper spray, and I never go to the back restroom without telling Jake exactly when I'll be back. Worst part is the not knowing. Is he still out there? Is he watching other women, waiting for his next opportunity? Sometimes I catch myself scanning the faces of late-night customers, wondering if he might come back. The logical part of my brain tells me he probably moved on to another town, another hunting ground. But the part of me that remembers his cold touch and the terrifying smile knows that some people like him don't just disappear. I still work the night shift, but I'm more careful now. I trust my instincts when something feels wrong, and I never ignore that little voice in the back of my mind that tells me when someone is watching me too closely. That night taught me that predators can look like anyone. They can sit quietly in corner booths, order pie and coffee, and wait patiently for the perfect moment to strike. If you work alone at night, especially in isolated areas, please be careful. Tell someone where you're going and when you'll be back. Trust your gut when something feels off. And remember that sometimes the most dangerous encounters happen in the places where we least expect them, in the mundane moments when our guard is down. I hope he never finds another opportunity like the one he almost had with me that night.
I was 16 when my friends and I discovered the abandoned Subway theater beneath downtown Seattle. It was the summer of 2019, and we were the kind of teenagers who thought exploring forbidden places made us cooler than we actually were. The theater had been closed since the 1980s, but urban explorers had found ways to access it through the old maintenance tunnels. My friend Marcus had gotten the access codes from his older brother, who worked for the city's infrastructure department. There were 4 of us that night: me, Marcus, our friend David, and this girl Sarah, who had just moved to our school. Sarah was trying to fit in with our group, and honestly, we were all trying to impress her. The entrance was through a rusted door in the basement of an old office building. We had to crawl through about 50 feet of cramped utility tunnels before we reached the theater's lower level. Our phone flashlights barely cut through the darkness as we made our way through corridors that smelled of decay and stagnant water. When we finally emerged into the main theater space, it was breathtaking in the most unsettling way possible. Rows of red velvet seats stretched out before us, most of them torn and moldy. The stage still had remnants of old set pieces, fake trees and painted backdrops that looked ghostly in our flashlight beams. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust that made us all cough when we disturbed it. We spent about an hour exploring, taking photos and videos for our social media. Marcus found some old playbills from the theater's final production, something called the Children's Hour from 1987. The paper was yellow and brittle, crumbling at our touch. Eventually, nature called and I needed to find a bathroom. Sarah mentioned she needed to go too, but when we found the restrooms, we discovered they were right next to each other, with walls so thin you could hear everything. She decided to wait, which left me to venture into the men's room alone. The bathroom was a nightmare of broken tiles and rusted fixtures. 3 urinals hung at odd angles, and 2 stall doors hung open, revealing toilets that had turned black with age and mold. But there was a 3rd stall at the very back that was closed, and somehow, impossibly, I could hear the sound of water running from inside it. I called out, "Hello, someone in there?" No response, just the continuous sound of water running, like someone had left a faucet on full blast. My curiosity got the better of me. I approached the closed stall and noticed that the lock was broken. The door was just resting against the frame. I pushed it open gently, expecting to find a broken pipe or something mundane. Instead, I found a man sitting on the toilet, fully clothed in what looked like a 1940s business suit. His head was tilted back, mouth wide open, and water was pouring out of his mouth like a fountain, creating a steady stream that splashed into the bowl below. His eyes were open, but completely white, like marble. I stumbled backward, but before I could scream, the man's head snapped forward to look directly at me. The water stopped flowing from his mouth, and he smiled, the most horrifying smile I've ever seen. His teeth were green with algae, and small fish were swimming between them. "Finally," he said, in a voice that sounded like it was coming from the bottom of a well, "someone came to see the show." That's when I noticed the walls around us were no longer the decrepit bathroom tiles. They had transformed into what looked like the inside of an aquarium, with green water pressing against glass panels. I could see shapes moving in the water, not fish, but human figures, all wearing the same style of clothing as the men in the stall. "The final performance never ended," the man continued, standing up slowly. Water continued to drip from his clothes, creating puddles that seemed to move on their own. "We've been waiting down here, rehearsing, preparing for the next audience." I tried to run, but my feet wouldn't move. It was like I was stuck in thick mud. The man stepped out of the stall, and I could see that his suit was actually made of seaweed, and his skin had the texture of something that had been underwater for decades. "Your friends are already taking their seats," he said, gesturing toward the door. "The show is about to begin." Somehow, I found the strength to break free from whatever was holding me. I ran out of the bathroom and back into the main theater. But what I saw there made my blood freeze. My friends were sitting in the front row, perfectly still, staring at the stage with blank expressions. Their clothes were soaking wet, and water was dripping from their hair onto the moldy carpet. On the stage, figures in period costumes were moving around in slow, jerky motions, like marionettes being controlled by an invisible puppeteer. They were performing some kind of play, but their mouths weren't moving in sync with the voices that echoed through the theater. "Marcus!" I shouted, but he didn't respond. None of them did. They just sat there watching the ghostly performance with empty eyes. The man from the bathroom appeared beside me, no longer dripping, but somehow even more terrifying in the dim theater lighting. "They understand now. This is where stories come to die. This is where audiences become part of the performance forever." I don't remember how I got out of there. The next thing I knew, I was stumbling through the utility tunnels, alone, my phone dead,
following the faint glow of an emergency exit sign. When I emerged into the office building basement, it was morning and security guards were waiting for me. They said I'd been missing for 3 days. My friends were never found. The police searched the tunnels, but they said there was no theater down there, just empty maintenance spaces and old sewer lines. They showed me city records proving that no theater had ever existed in that location. But I know what I saw. And sometimes, late at night, I get text messages from Marcus's phone number. They're always the same. "The show must go on. Come back and take your seat." I've changed my number 4 times, but the messages keep coming. And in my dreams, I can still hear the sound of that man's voice echoing through empty theater seats. Finally, someone came to see the show. The worst part is, sometimes I find myself wanting to go back. There's something calling me back to that place, something that whispers that my friends are still down there, waiting for me to join them in the eternal performance. I'm 21 years old now, and I've never been in another theater since that night. I can't even watch movies without thinking about those empty eyes staring at a stage that shouldn't exist, in a place where time seems to have stopped, and where the audience becomes the show.
I've always struggled with severe insomnia and panic attacks, conditions that have followed me since childhood. At 25, I was working as a medical transcriptionist for a private psychiatric clinic on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. The job was perfect for someone like me. I could work night shifts when the building was mostly empty, which helped with my social anxiety, and the pay was good enough to cover my therapy and medication. The Whitmore Psychiatric Institute was housed in a converted Victorian mansion that had been a mental hospital in the early 1900s. The building had that institutional smell that never quite goes away, disinfectant mixed with something older, something that seemed baked into the walls themselves. During the day, it bustled with doctors, nurses, and patients, but at night, it became a different place entirely. My office was on the 2nd floor, at the end of a long hallway lined with patient rooms that were vacant during evening hours. The building's old heating system would create strange noises throughout the night, pipes knocking, floors creaking, doors settling. I'd grown accustomed to these sounds over the months I'd worked there. It was around 2 a.m. on a Wednesday night in November when I first noticed something was wrong. I'd been transcribing therapy session notes when I realized I desperately needed to use the restroom. The staff bathroom on my floor was located at the opposite end of the hallway, past all the empty patient rooms. I made my way down the dimly lit corridor, my footsteps echoing on the old hardwood floors. The bathroom was a small, outdated space with a single toilet, sink, and mirror that had silver backing that was starting to peel around the edges. Motion sensor lights flickered on as I entered, casting harsh shadows that made everything look more unsettling than it should have. As I was washing my hands, I heard something that made me freeze, the sound of someone crying. It was soft at first, like quiet sobbing coming from somewhere nearby. I turned off the water and listened carefully. The crying was coming from inside the walls, as if someone was trapped in the space between the bathroom and the adjacent room. I pressed my ear against the wall, and the crying became clearer. It was a woman's voice, repeating the same phrase over and over. "Please let me out. I don't belong here. I'm not sick. Please let me out." My heart started racing. I knew the room next to the bathroom was supposed to be empty. It was an old storage closet that hadn't been used in years. But I could hear the voice so clearly, as if someone was sitting just on the other side of that wall. I left the bathroom quickly and walked to what I thought was the storage room door. But when I tried the handle, it was locked. I pulled out my master key. As night staff, I had access to most areas of the building, but when I opened the door, I found something impossible. Instead of a small storage closet, there was a patient room that I'd never seen before. It was decorated like the other patient rooms, but everything looked older, as if it hadn't been updated since the building's original use as a mental hospital. The bed had restraint straps, and there were scratch marks on the walls, as if someone had been clawing at them for years. Sitting on the bed was a woman in a white hospital gown, rocking back and forth. Her hair was long and unkempt, and when she looked up at me, I saw that her eyes were completely bloodshot, as if she hadn't slept in weeks. "Finally," she said, her voice hoarse and desperate. "Someone can see me. I've been trying to get someone's attention for so long." I wanted to run, but something about her desperation kept me frozen in the doorway. "Who are you?" I managed to ask. "My name is Alina Whitmore," she said, and the name sent chills down my spine. Whitmore, the same name as the institute. I was the first patient here back in 1923. They said I was having hysteria, that I was imagining things, but I wasn't sick. I never was. She stood up slowly, and I could see that her feet were chained to the floor with old-fashioned shackles that looked like they belonged in a medieval dungeon. "They kept me in this room for 37 years, she continued. 37 years of treatments that weren't treatments, of doctors who didn't listen, of being told that what I knew to be true was just my imagination." "That's impossible," I said, backing away from the door. "This building wasn't a hospital that long ago." Alina smiled, but it was a sad, broken smile. "Time works differently when you're trapped between worlds. I died in this room in 1960, but I never left. I've been watching, listening, trying to warn people." "Warn people about what?" "About Dr. Whitmore, my own brother. He's still here, still practicing, still convincing people that what they know to be true is just their imagination." As she spoke, the room began to change around us. The modern fixtures faded away, replaced by older equipment, leather restraints, metal contraptions I couldn't identify, and bottles filled with mysterious liquids. The walls became stained with decades of despair. "He's been using this place to experiment on people for over a century," Alina whispered, "making them question their own minds, their own reality. And at night, when the building is quiet, he still walks these halls." That's when I heard footsteps coming down the corridor behind me, slow, deliberate steps accompanied by the tapping of a walking cane. I turned to see a figure approaching through the dim hallway light. It was an elderly man in an old-fashioned suit, carrying a black medical bag and using an ornate wooden cane. "Ah, Miss Rodriguez," he said, and somehow he knew my name even though I'd never seen him before. "Having trouble sleeping again, are we? Perhaps it's time for another adjustment to your medication." I realized with growing horror that he was talking about my insomnia, my anxiety, conditions that were documented in my employee health records. But this man wasn't any of the doctors I knew worked at the clinic. "Don't listen to him," Alina called out from behind me. "He'll try to convince you that everything you're experiencing is just a symptom of your conditions. That's what he does. That's what he's always done." Dr. Whitmore smiled, and his teeth were yellow and ancient. "Eleanor, you're frightening our guest. You know you shouldn't be out of your room." "I'm not Eleanor," the woman screamed. "My name is Sarah Chen. I was a patient here last year. You convinced everyone that I was delusional, that my memories of abuse were false memories created by my trauma. But I remembered everything, and you couldn't stand that someone saw through your lies." The man's expression darkened. "Back to your room, Sarah. Or should I say Eleanor? Or perhaps you're Margaret. You patients always get so confused about your identities." That's when I understood. The woman in the room wasn't just one person. She was every patient who had ever been silenced, dismissed, or gaslit by the psychiatric system. Every woman who had been told that her truth wasn't valid, that her memories weren't real, that her experiences were just symptoms to be medicated away. "Run," she whispered to me. "Run before he makes you forget what you've seen. Before he convinces you that this was all just a panic attack, just your anxiety playing tricks on you." I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted down the hallway, past my office, down the stairs, and out of the building. I sat in my car until sunrise, shaking and trying to make sense of what had happened. The next day, I called in sick. The day after that, I quit via email. When I went to pick up my final paycheck, the administrator seemed confused about my resignation letter. "What storage room?" she asked when I mentioned what I'd seen. "There's no room next to the second-floor bathroom. That's just wall space. The building's original blueprints show that area was never developed." But I know what I saw, and I know what I heard. Eleanor, or Sarah, or Margaret, or whatever her real name was, she was trying to warn me about something that goes deeper than just one ghostly encounter. I've done research since then. The Whitmore Institute has been operating under different names for over a century, always founded by members of the same family, always specializing in treating women with hysteria, false memories, and delusional disorders. I work from home now, doing freelance transcription for multiple clinics. But sometimes, late at night when I'm working on psychiatric reports, I hear that woman's voice echoing in my head. "Please let me out. I don't belong here. I'm not sick." And I wonder how many other women have been silenced in rooms that officially don't exist, by doctors who gaslight their patients so thoroughly that even the patients begin to question their own reality. The scariest part isn't the ghost I encountered. It's the realization that the real horror isn't supernatural at all. It's the systematic silencing of voices that dare to speak truth to power, even when that truth is inconvenient or uncomfortable. Sometimes the monsters are real, and sometimes they wear white coats and carry medical degrees.
I've always been a night owl, and living alone in my studio apartment in downtown Denver meant I could keep whatever schedule I wanted. At 28, I was working remotely as a software developer, which gave me the freedom to work through the night and sleep during the day. It was a lifestyle that suited my introverted nature perfectly. Fewer people around, quieter streets, and cheaper late-night food delivery. My building was one of those converted warehouses that had been turned into trendy loft apartments. It was popular with young professionals who wanted that urban aesthetic without breaking the bank. The building had a 24-hour fitness center, a rooftop terrace, and, most importantly for me, a quiet atmosphere during the night hours when most residents were asleep. It was around 3:30 a.m. on a Thursday in March when I decided to take a break from debugging code and grab a snack from the vending machines in the lobby. I'd been working for 6 straight hours, and my back was killing me from hunching over my laptop. The lobby was completely deserted, lit only by the soft glow of emergency lighting and the flickering screen of the old vending machine. After getting my energy drink and chips, I realized I needed to use the restroom before heading back upstairs. There was a single occupancy bathroom just off the lobby. Nothing fancy, just a toilet, sink, and mirror, but it was always clean and well maintained. I unlocked the door with my key fob and stepped inside. The motion sensor lights flickered on, and I noticed immediately that something was off about the mirror above the sink. Instead of my usual reflection, I saw someone else entirely. A man who looked exactly like me, but wearing completely different clothes. I was in my usual late-night attire, gray sweatpants and an old college t-shirt, but the person in the mirror was wearing an expensive-looking navy suit with a crisp white shirt and red tie. He was standing in what appeared to be a much nicer bathroom, marble countertops, gold fixtures, and elegant lighting. I blinked hard, thinking maybe I was more tired than I'd realized. But when I opened my eyes, the other version of me was still there, and he was looking directly at me with an expression of surprise that probably matched my own. "Holy shit!" I said out loud, and I watched as Miromi's mouth moved at exactly the same time, forming the same words. But his voice sounded different, more confident, more polished than my own. I raised my hand, and he raised his hand. I took a step back, and he took a step back, but when I looked down at the floor in the mirror, I could see that he was standing on what looked like expensive marble tiles, while I was standing on the building's standard industrial concrete flooring. "This is impossible," I whispered, and again I saw his mouth move in sync with mine, but the voice that came back sounded like someone who'd never doubted himself a day in his life. I leaned closer to the mirror, studying his face. It was definitely me. Same brown eyes, same slightly crooked nose from when I'd broken it playing basketball in high school, same scar on my chin from a childhood accident. But there was something different about his expression. Where I always looked a little uncertain, a little anxious, this version of me had the kind of confident demeanor I'd always wished I possessed. That's when I noticed he was wearing a wedding ring. A simple gold band that gleamed under the elegant lighting of his bathroom. I looked down at my own left hand, bare, just like it had been for my entire 28 years of life. "Who are you?" I asked the mirror, feeling ridiculous for talking to my own reflection. Miromi tilted his head, studying me with the same confusion I was feeling. But when he spoke, the words didn't match what I had said. "I could ask you the same thing," he said, his voice carrying through the mirror with perfect clarity. "You look like me, but you're in my bathroom. How is that possible?" I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. This wasn't just a weird reflection anymore. This was a conversation with someone who looked exactly like me, but claimed to be someone else entirely. "Your bathroom?" I managed to stammer. "This is the lobby bathroom in my apartment building." He shook his head, and I could see confusion growing in his eyes. "No, this is the guest bathroom in my house. I live in Cherry Hills Village with my wife, Emma. We've been married for 3 years. Cherry Hills Village, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the Denver area. The kind of place I'd driven through a few times, but never imagined actually living in. "That's impossible," I said. "I'm single. I live alone in a studio apartment downtown. I work as a freelance developer." Miromi's expression shifted from confusion to something that looked almost like pity. "I'm the CTO of a tech startup. We just went public last month. Emma and I are talking about starting a family soon." I felt a strange mix of emotions, envy, disbelief, and a growing sense of unease. This version of me seemed to have everything I'd ever wanted but had never been able to achieve. The confidence to pursue leadership roles, the social skills to maintain a relationship, the success that had always seemed just out of reach. "How?" I asked quietly. "How did you get all that?" He leaned closer to his side of the mirror, and I could see genuine concern in his eyes. "What do you mean?" "I made choices, I took risks, I put myself out there even when it was scary." "But what if I'd made different choices?" I asked, more to myself than to him. Then maybe you'd be where I am, and maybe I'd be where you are. As we talked, I began to notice other differences in our appearances. His skin looked healthier, like someone who exercised regularly and ate well. His hair was professionally styled instead of the messy, unkempt look I usually sported. Even his posture was different, straighter, more confident. Is this really happening? Am I having some kind of breakdown? I don't know, he admitted, but I can see you as clearly as you can see me. And this definitely isn't normal.
That's when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my bathroom. Heavy, slow footsteps that didn't sound like any of the residents I knew. I looked toward the door, then back at the mirror, but Mirror Me was looking in a different direction entirely. "Someone's coming," he said, his voice tense with worry. "Someone's in my house who shouldn't be there." The footsteps outside my door stopped. I could see a shadow blocking the light that usually showed under the door. Someone was standing right outside, listening. In the mirror, I watched as my other self slowly reached for something I couldn't see, probably a phone to call the police. "There's someone outside my bathroom too," I whispered. That's when the door handle began to turn, but I knew I had locked it when I came in. The building's bathrooms were always supposed to be locked, and only residents with key fobs could access them. Mirror Me was backing away from his door too, and I could see terror in his eyes that probably matched my own. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "remember that you have choices. You can still change things. You don't have to stay where you are." The door opened slowly, and I saw a figure step into the doorway, but it was just a silhouette, backlit by the emergency lighting. I couldn't make out any features, just a human-shaped shadow. In the mirror, I saw a similar figure entering Mirror Me's bathroom, but from his reaction, it seemed like he could see details that I couldn't. "No," he said, his voice filled with recognition and horror. "You're supposed to be dead. The accident was 20 years ago." The figure in my doorway stepped forward, and I finally saw his face. It was me, another version of me, but this one looked wrong. His skin was pale and waxy, his eyes were sunken and dark, and he was wearing clothes that looked like they'd been underwater for a very long time. "Hello, boys," the waterlogged version of me said, his voice sounding like it was coming from the bottom of a lake. "Did you really think you could keep living lives that were supposed to be mine?" I looked back at the mirror and saw that Mirror Me was facing an identical figure, another drowned version of ourselves. The car accident when we were 8. The one where we nearly drowned in Miller's Creek. In some realities, we didn't make it out, and we've been watching all the lives we never got to live. I remembered that accident. I'd fallen through thin ice while playing near the creek behind our childhood home. I'd nearly drowned before my older brother pulled me out. I always wondered what would have happened if he hadn't been there that day. "Now it's time to make things even," the drowned version said, stepping closer. "One of us gets to keep living, and the other two need to take our place in the water." I looked at Mirror Me one last time. He was backing away from his own version of this nightmare, but he looked back at me and mouthed the words, "Make the choice." I didn't wait to see what the waterlogged version of myself had planned. I pushed past him and ran out of the bathroom, through the lobby, and up the stairs to my apartment. I slammed the door behind me and engaged every lock I had. I never used that bathroom again. I started going to the 24-hour diner down the street whenever I needed to leave my apartment at night. But sometimes, when I catch my reflection in my bathroom mirror at home, I see him, the successful version of me, living the life I never had the courage to pursue. And sometimes, just sometimes, I see the other one too, the one who drowned, the one who's still waiting at the bottom of Miller's Creek, watching all the lives he never got to live. The worst part is that I can never tell which reflection is really mine anymore. Am I the failed version looking at success, the successful one looking at failure? Or am I the drowned one, imagining all the lives I never got to have?
All I know is that every choice I didn't make, every risk I didn't take, every opportunity I let slip by, they're all still out there somewhere, living in mirrors I'm afraid to look into. And late at night, when I'm working alone in my apartment, I can still hear that waterlogged voice whispering, "Make the choice. Make the choice before someone else makes it for you."